Ask Reddit by Jasper Midnight. What is the stupidest thing you've heard someone say that they were 100% serious about? At one of my first jobs as a graphic designer, a client called me into his office and pulled up a photo he took. He then asked me if I could turn it around. No, not rotate it, but turn the viewpoint around. He wanted to see what was behind the camera when he originally took the photo. God, I have so many stories from that job. Tell more. I'm an artist too, and damn, do people have a misguided idea of what we can do? My favorites are the people who want horizontal content put in a vertical space but without altering any of it. A guy I work with said that a football referee runs over the distance of a marathon during a game. I pointed out that a football game was only 90 minutes long and that the marathon record was just over 2 hours, so that would be impossible. He said it was possible, because a football referee changes direction a lot during a game, and it all adds up. So if I ran in a circle, would all the direction changes add up to the world record? English teacher here. Once, while showing my class the Leonardo DiCaprio version of Romeo and Juliet, I had a student stare at the screen in utter confusion for half the movie before she said, "How can he be in this movie? He died in Titanic." I was a student in HS when Titanic came out. I vividly remember talking about the movie in class, and this one girl asking, with all sincerity, "Wouldn't it just be awful if that actually happened?" At age 27, my friend said that he had gotten into a fight with his girlfriend because he knew that his parents didn't have to have sex to conceive him. His mom got pregnant with him because they got married. Okay, I have to ask the question. How does a guy like that even get a girlfriend? Yeah bro, it says carbonated because they removed the carbs while standing in line at a drugstore. Best eavesdrop of my life. My fav eavesdrop was Greek mythology is wild. It's like Harry Potter but in real life. Can you email me back the PDF I emailed you? It's my only copy. My most recent boss. Print out that thing I just emailed you and scan it and send it to so and so. The amount of stuff I watched her print and scan so she could attach the scan to an email. If I don't finish all my eggs within 2 weeks, I throw them out. I don't want the light in the fridge to make them hatch. You know those eggs aren't fertilized, right? And also the light goes off when you close the door. Huh? Also eggs aren't hatched by light but warmth. A professor in college refused to give back our tests because you should know what you did wrong. They just hadn't marked them properly. Someone I know argued with me that I do not live anywhere near Canada. He got pretty nasty about it too. When I showed him proof, he said, "Well, I only know Texas. I live right outside of Detroit, Michigan. Closer to Canada than I am to any other state." I have also had a few people argue with me that I do not live in the Eastern time zone. I guess they know better than someone who actually lives here. What a weird thing for him to get nasty about. I was stationed in Germany in the late 80s-90s. Every Thanksgiving multiple dudes would be perplexed as to why the Germans didn't celebrate. A dude once told me he was excited to celebrate the 4th with the Germans and asked if they did fireworks. I love you my brothers, but some of you are dumb. When I was in Germany on a rotation, they actually put on an incredible fireworks display for us. So did the Afghans, used flares from their little lookout thingers around the FOB, when I was deployed. I was astonished and then extremely touched in both scenarios. How can Hawaii and Alaska have such different temperatures when they are right next to each other on the map? In a similar vein, Alaska is an island. I don't have an email, I have a Gmail. Fuck call center work. I remember when mail started getting big. My grandmother thought it was the latest version of email because G is later in the alphabet than E. when I was a kid, and on and off when I was older, until after it was decommissioned. My dad worked at a nuclear power plant. I was mentioning this to a college-aged co-worker at one point. I think I was telling a story about take your daughter to work day, or something, and co-worker stops me. Wait, those are really real? I stopped talking, at a loss for words. I then had her repeat what she wanted to know. Nuclear power plants are actually real things? I thought they were made up for like The Simpsons. Had she never heard of Chernobyl? A guide dog's job is to drive the car for the blind person. 20 years later and she'll still argue the point. I would pay good money to see a dog drive a car correctly. I was on a date at an art museum. The painting tag said who it was made by the title and made Circe 1600 and she said, do you think the earth was even around back then? You just never really know. Were you on a date with Philomena Kunk? Haha. Blueberry muffins you buy pre-made don't have any blueberries in them. Blueberries cost too much. They dye bees blue because they have the same texture and use them. He has explained it to multiple people multiple times. I love that getting bees and dyeing them blue apparently costs less than just using blueberries. That ceiling fan dust was the cause of cancer. Like cancer actually did not exist until ceiling fans collected dust and it fell off. Bro. Some random girl on the elevator pointed out how ridiculous it is that we had a button for the floor we were already on. People who build shit are so stupid, she said with 100% seriousness. That sounds like someone who's only experienced customizable interfaces like smartphones. In college my teaching assistant in my dinosaurs class insisted that roadrunners weren't real and laughed at me for suggesting it as an answer for a bird that runs fast. But the real dummy was me because I've seen one in real life and I still said oh okay. In grade 6 my class read a poem about ptarmigans where every word starting with T was changed to PT. The teacher said that ptarmigans were a made-up animal. I countered that they were a type of Arctic bird, so he sent me to the school library to find evidence. I came back with an encyclopedia, turned to the entry for ptarmigan and he read it out to the class and told everyone that teachers don't know everything and they should never be afraid to speak up. One of the best teachers I ever had, thanks Mr. Murphy. My sister's friend after beating my fiancé for the first time. Where is she from? Me, she was born here in the States but she's Cambodian. Her, oh my god. You can't be with her, they eat people. Me, long blank stare, I think you're thinking of cannibals. Her, long blank stare, what's the difference? Same woman was shocked to find out we believed in space. As in the planets and stars and galaxies. She thought half the sky was light and half the sky was dark and the planets spinning inside the atmosphere is why we had night and day and that there was nothing else out there. By far the dumbest person I've ever met. I have so many more stories about her. More stories please. How do we know it wasn't just ostriches on the radar that triggered Pearl Harbor, my dude? What? Unless the Japanese strapped bombs to the ostriches and dropped them on Pearl Harbor, he's mistaken. If Earth is spinning, then why my front door is always facing east? I think this broke my brain. Once had someone try to sell me the theory that the moon is a hologram made by the government to trick people. Had to do something after we destroyed it following the moon landing. Back during the mosque shooting in New Zealand and the government there were trying to ban guns, my co-worker said that they can't do that since it violates the American Second Amendment. Here in Australia we had anti-vax protesters carrying placards demanding their 14th Amendment rights. I work in construction and my rigger told me he doesn't believe in gravity with 100% seriousness. Mind you, his job is to rig tens of thousands of pounds of steel so it doesn't fall when moving it with a crane. Edit, steel. I'd like to believe that maybe he's somehow just confused as to what gravity means. I can't get my head around how the idea that gravity isn't real even works. Like, why does he think things fall down when dropped? Fish aren't animals, they're mammals. And dolphins are fish, obviously. Women can control their periods. This person legitimately thought that the blood can just be sucked back in. It would be like trying to hold a nosebleed in by flexing your nostrils, lol. Women have 6 ovaries, my 46-year-old sister. I wonder where my other 4 went. You have to understand, I'm not a vibrational match for car accidents, so we'll be safer if I drive. Vibrational match? What does that mean? Maybe too obscure, but anyway. I was the radiation safety office for our lab group many years ago and was telling one of our more truly brilliant, not being sarcastic, PhDs that his badge came up hot, meaning his technique was bad and he was going to have to be retrained, and he said, "It doesn't affect me, I'm done having my children." Like being careless with radioactive isotopes can only affect your gonads and not, IDK, give you fucking cancer. And before too long, they'll be done having their dad. I knew that from the get-go, then proceeded to argue that it was definitely gecko and not get-go. PS, I now only say from the get-go because that shit's hilarious. Our bony Peltier moment. I pieced out a chicken for frying, and threw spine and other trimmings in a pot with water to boil up for broth. Hubby blew a gasket, insisting we couldn't possibly eat that because there'd been raw chicken in the pot. Yes, it was raw, but it's cooked with the water to become broth. Took a solid 10 minutes of arguing with him that I wasn't going to give us food poisoning by cooking a chicken carcass to make broth. I'd been making chicken broth this way for a decade by that time, but it was the first time he'd observed me doing so. Reminds me of doing hot pot when I was in Hong Kong. Essentially it's just boiling meat and veggies in water fondue style. We learned from the locals really fast that you don't take out things until all the meat in the pot is cooked before starting the next batch. Got into an argument with a guy that thought limes were unripe lemons. He had so much conviction that by the end I was beginning to question my own knowledge. That's how they get ya. But unripe lemons do look like limes, so it's not that daft unless you blindly believe it. My husband believed this as a kid too till he knew better. They didn't think dinosaurs were actually real, just a tale legend like dragons and unicorns. I thought they were making a joke for a moment. I had a very religious acquaintance years ago tell me that dinosaurs, fossils, were all planted by the devil to confuse people. He was serious, I got confused. I work for a cell phone company and someone seriously thought that 5G towers were causing and distributing COVID. I was extremely surprised that once I explained cell phone towers and creating extremely specific biological matter and distributing them through radio waves to your face, they actually understood how crazy that sounded. When my ex told me that there was a growing number of people claiming that 5G caused COVID, at first I thought it had to be a joke, that people were saying it ironically or just being silly little shit stirrers, but to my dismay, there really is a whole wild conspiracy theory about it, and some people are very serious about believing it. Years ago I was in a grocery store with my dad, who is a very loud and TPC, anti-woke type. We were next to one of those waist-high chest freezers and my dad got his cart slightly stuck on one of the bumper rails for a second. He starts going off about how dumb it is that dumb liberals make stores put in these stupid poles around the freezers just so midgets can stand on them to look in the freezer. Me and my sister both stared at him for what felt like a solid minute before realizing he was dead ass serious, before explaining that the rails were actually to prevent people ramming their carts into the freezer, and in fact had nothing to do with little people. We still make fun of him for the midget pole, to this day. It's funny that it's instantly evil liberals at play for everything that is wrong in his world. I bet if he got weeds in his lawn, some liberal boogeyman planted them there at night. Women don't have rectums. Maybe they were thinking of prostates? That the government intentionally blew up the space shuttle Challenger. This guy spent like an hour trying to explain what the government would gain from that when I asked him. It made no sense. First, he tried to say that they did it for the $100 million people donated to the families. Like dude, it costs way more than that to build and launch a space shuttle. I can appreciate a good, well thought out conspiracy theory, but the first thing I need to know is what they gained from it. If you can't answer that, your conspiracy theory is dumb. I once had a coworker who believed with all sincerity that twins could only be conceived through anal sex. This is spectacular. May I ask how old they were? On the way to Nick with a friend. She said, "OMG, I can't wait to see the Eiffel Tower. I'm so excited." Confession. It was me. When I was 18, my brother introduced me to his girlfriend who was from New Zealand. I told her that her English was very good. Oh geez, I bet that made second breakfast pretty awkward. A building on our street was set to be torn down, and then wasn't. My neighbor texted me to ask what I thought. I responded, maybe they weren't able to, and she asked if I thought that was because of ghosts. I said, no, probably permits. This was a while back, but there was a vote coming up in the state of WA for a gas tax increase. Money was to be put into road systems. Paper did an article on what projects were in it. Was a note of a nearby one, and very old bridge, local road crossing an interstate, was way overdue for replacement. The article noted that if the tax didn't pass, the new bridge would be the same size as the old one, 2 narrow lanes, one each direction. If the tax did pass, the new bridge would be normal width lanes, plus sidewalks. I had arguments with people at work who were convinced that meant that, if the tax passed, they would tear down the old bridge, build a new, narrow lane one, immediately tear it down, and then build the regular lane plus sidewalk bridge. I reread the article. Nothing in it could even be remotely be interpreted to mean that. It even gave the proposed star. The tax passed. It's a nice bridge. That Erto got cut off when she was little and the doctors used pig stem cells to grow it back. How can the Nile empty into the sea like that, believing that water can't flow up against gravity? The teacher handled it with a lot of seasoned grace when she said, "Okay, let's all just get this straight. North does not equal up." My brother, whom I still love dearly even though he's strange as hell, firmly believes that the royal family are all lizard people and that Princess Di knew this and was going to expose them and that's why they had her killed. He told me that and I about lost it. He also is a flat earth believer. Them, is the shredded beef, pork? Me, no, the shredded pork is pork. My kids thought all meat, pork, beef, chicken, turkey, duck, was meat. Animals lived on farms and had nothing to do with meat. Meat was sometimes called chicken or beef depending on how it was cooked. You cook meat into beef teriyaki or into chicken parmesan. I was helping one take their chicken off the bones one and was asked, why do they even put bones in meat anyway, and I gently explained that we're eating dead animals. 2 kids cried. The other one squealed, dead animals taste awesome. That bleach is a cure for AIDS. We were children at the time but still. I mean, technically, I guarantee you drink enough bleach you won't have AIDS. At my previous job we were discussing food to get for a holiday since we had many Muslim employees and they have to eat halal. So we were discussing things without pork. My coworker says, what is pork though? Is pork chicken? My wife is affected by 5G, so we're putting Faraday cages across the windows in her bedroom. Doesn't work like that, buddy, but I'll still sell you the copper wire to ground your ineffective copper window screens. Only the biological mother's breast milk is safe for her baby. If you give that milk to a different child, it has no nutritional benefit. Some guy. Nobility and upper classes between 3500 BC and 1950.